All right, we are live.
Okay. The time is 10 o'clock. It's Wednesday, November 15th. I'll call the commission meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Shapiro,
Here.
Commissioner Bailey. Commissioner, you're on mute.
On mute and here.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorner.
Here.
Commissioner Giraldo. We see
Try
you,
it
but
again,
you
you're on
remain
mute,
on
man.
mute.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Harris.
Present.
Commissioner Bartley.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Pedowin.
Here.
All 7 expected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. I would look for a motion and one motion to approve both the commission agenda and the commission minutes of October 18, 2023.
So move.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Giraldo, a second by Commissioner Bailey. This is for both the commission agenda and the commission minutes. Any discussion? No discussion. Mr. Adams, can you call the roll, please? I vote
Chair
aye.
Shapiro.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Harris.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartley.
Aye.
Commissioner Pedowin.
Aye.
7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Number of announcements that you will see referenced here. Just want to remind everybody of one of them specifically. We have our One Commission holiday event. Looking forward to it. It's going to be in Silver Spring. I'm sure you've all received the information about it. A number of other events too as we enter the holiday season, which we're excited about. Next we have committee minutes, board reports. The only thing we have is the Employee Retirement Association Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes. This is for information only. There's no vote associated with this, correct, Mr. Adams?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So nothing with that. We'll move on to our action presentation items. First item is the special guest we see before us. We have an update on the commission-wide performance metrics project. Commissioners, let me just say this has been done, a number of us are newer. This has been going on for, I think, about a year and a half at this point, and we've made some interesting progress. I'm glad the governor's here to share some of the steps that we've been taking. Before we do that, actually, and I missed this under general announcements, I just want to let everybody know that, and this is a bit with my informality, we are right in the midst of our move into our new headquarters building on the Prince George's side. So as of yesterday and today, and by Thursday, we'll be formally up and running at 1616 McCormick Drive in our new headquarters building. We're out of the CAB in Upper Marlboro. Excited to have you all come check it out as soon as possible. I could not be more appreciative, thankful to the team for making this happen in the smoothest way possible. A special shout out to our acting planning director, Suzanne King. She will be the first to say that this was a team effort, and it is a team effort. And she has done an unbelievable job at shepherding all this through. So thanks to her, thanks to the whole team, and happy to be in our new space. With that, I will turn it over to either Asantha or to Mr. O'Malley to talk about the commission-wide performance metrics project.
I'll defer to Asantha if she's.
There we go. Okay, I got the microphone working. Yes, good morning, everybody. For the record, Asantha Chang-Smith, Executive Director, M-NCPPC. We are delighted to have Governor O'Malley here with us today. He is actually here as our consultant with our performance measurement program. And this was something that about a year and a half ago we discussed with all the department heads and with the commissioners, and we decided to move ahead. We determined that there were 3 areas that we wanted to look at. One of them particularly was very important because it had to do with our supplier diversity, but also looking at workers' compensation, how we can reduce some of the liabilities, as well as looking at sustainability. And Governor O'Malley and his team through Guidehouse, I see some of the team members there, I see Sasha, Rebecca, have really been helping us, and it's a 3-phase effort. And so I know a lot of our commissioners are new here, and so we really wanted to give you, from the top, an update on where we are and how things are moving. And we have literally gotten the best consultant we possibly could get in the field of performance measurement in government. And we're just delighted that Governor O'Malley has decided to work with us and continues to work with us on this endeavor. And thank you, Governor, and please go ahead.
Hey, thank you. I think what I'm going to do, and thank you for those plaudits. Anything I was able to accomplish in government was, I absolutely believe, because of 2 things: really good people coming to my aid, and the willingness to measure performance openly and transparently. To point to a place on the horizon, create a winnable game with a compelling scoreboard, and get the best out of people. So when Assunta called and said that she believed that the commission wanted to move in this direction and would benefit from it, I was glad to help. And I'm, as a citizen of Maryland, I'm going to be, elated and continue to be glad to help. But before I get down the road, I think I'm going to talk again in a second, but I think Sasha Hammond has been doing the really awesome work on a day-to-day basis on this project. She used to work for Adrian Fenty in his CAPSTAT program, which is very much like the Baltimore City STAT program. And so, Sasha, you want to introduce our team and tell everybody who Guidehouse is, and then I'll come back at your direction.
I do. And hello, everyone. I'm Sasha Hammond. I actually worked under the administration of Muriel Bowser. So I've been doing this work for a really long time at the state and local government level, and also with federal clients. I work in cybersecurity as well. So have a lot of experience with performance management and program evaluation and pretty much cross-functional government functions. So I'm happy to be here. Before we start, I also want to check, is it okay if we share our slides? We had a few slides prepared, and just wanted to make sure that was okay. And if it is, then we'll go ahead and pull that up.
Yes, go ahead, Sasha.
Okay, thank you so much. If we can get started. And while I find these slides, is it okay if I also introduce my colleagues from Guidehouse? Becca, are you on?
Yes, Becky.
Please.
Yes. Hi, Sasha. Hi, everyone. I'm Becca McGregor. I'm a director with Guidehouse. I've worked for the firm for 13 years. If you've never heard of the name Guidehouse, we won't hold that against you. We've only been a brand name for about 5 years. We're kind of an amalgamation of other public sector consulting firms, PwC and Grant Thornton in particular. But we are very dedicated to the public sector. I'm born and raised in Montgomery County and a product of the park system, and grew up playing soccer in M-NCPPC park. So really honored to be here with you today and working with you all on performance management excellence for your organization. So thank you all so much for trusting in us and working with us in this very important endeavor.
Thank you.
Still looking for my set of slides.
I can try to pull them up too, if that's okay.
Yes, if you would not mind. For some reason, it's not giving me the option.
You know, I'm having trouble too. After, 3.5 years of Zoom calls, we're still. All
So
right.
I'm
Sasha,
wondering
Go ahead.
if,
Sasha, I'm sending you a PDF of mine. You want me to start talking in the meantime?
Yep,
Whoop,
I
yeah,
think
I
they're
would
pulling
say
up.
start talking.
Go ahead.
hold on, something's coming up.
Just taking a minute,
There we
but I
go.
think, go ahead, Governor.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Right. So I spoke a little bit before. This is what we're going to go through very quickly. We did the introductions, a little bit of project overview and Q&A. So the National Capital Park and Planning Commission is an awesome organization, time honored, serves a lot of people, and does it very, very well. And if you didn't do it very well, you wouldn't have been one of the 4 finalists for the NRPA gold medal competition. The entity that won was Virginia Beach, and they do have a performance management office. And another entity that finished in that was one of the finalists was Gwinnett County outside of Atlanta. They too have a performance management analysis function. So there's a number of reasons why I believe the people of the National Capital Region would benefit greatly from the commission going to the next level on what is already a pretty good offering of service to people. Yes, justification of your dollars, showing progress towards strategic plans, and encouraging organizational learning and improvement, supporting overall transparency and accountability. But the most important one is really to deliver better services to the people that all of you volunteer your time or give your entire days and lives to serving. So the project scope that we were looking at when we came in was to look at mission-driven core services, the customer-focused programs, management, employee accountability, the degree of systems and technology that's in place. And so Guidehouse has been meeting with a lot of different cuts and groupings of your managers and workers over the last year. And as Asunta indicated, kind of focusing in from the CAS standpoint anyway on sustainability, HR, and procurement. I have to tell you that way back in the day when I had more hair and more of it was black and Baltimore City started doing performance management, it wasn't because we were rolling in cash. We had lost more population than any city in America over the prior 30 years. And when people left, so did the ability to support essential services. So we didn't do it to win awards. We did it because we needed to save money from all of the other places where we were doing things inefficiently the way we always had for 50 years. And we needed to put it into youth intervention programs and public safety improvement. So, but one of the areas that we focused on, probably apropos to where the commission is at this point as well, was workers' comp. That's the way it is. It always goes up. There's nothing we can do about it. We heard all of those things, and we decided to do something about it. And then that very first year after just measuring performance, getting people to doctors more quickly, and creating an every 2-week cadence, getting people together in a huddle, running plays, measuring yardage, and seeing if we were doing things that were working, we had enormous savings from workers' comp, which meant healthier workers. It also meant dollars that we could then put into other things that we need. So look, I want to applaud you for heading in this direction. There have been kind of 3 phases, as Asunta teed up, and Sasha did as well. We are through kind of phase 1 and phase 2. And before I turn it back over to Sasha, let me also encourage you, because we always hear the words openness and transparency. But in my experience, and I'd worked for Grant Thornton for 6 years, they recruited me because they were one of the top people in the federal space for performance management and wanted to do more with state and local governments. For all that we hear about people saying open and transparent, there are very few organizations that have the guts to actually do it rather than just say it. And I think this commission is well poised and well positioned not only to get that gold medal, but really to be a part of the vanguard of this movement, if you will. that's going to be essential to regain the trust of people in their own government and in their own democracy. The hardest thing is to start. The second hardest thing is to keep going. Your data is never going to be perfect. Your techniques are never going to be perfect. Your management core isn't going to suddenly become the smartest and the best overnight. But if you keep going, you will get better every 2 weeks instead of hopefully once a year. And so with that, let me turn it over to Sasha.
Thank you so much, Governor. If we could advance to the next slide, please. So, what is the project scope? I will say, as a proud Prince George's County resident and an avid user of your facilities, it really has been an honor to work with you on launching this particular initiative. We've learned so much, and what we've learned that obviously measuring performance against outcomes is just a reality. I mean, we all have customers, we all have goals we have to achieve, and we really have to have a way to see the value of our work. And so for this project, our approach is to launch it in a way that focuses on results that matter. We don't want to measure everything that, you could potentially measure. We want to focus on those outcomes that are important to you, the internal customers, and also your external customers. We're also incorporating performance management best practices, and we're linking that to your decision making. And in doing that, we're also embracing the Commission's guiding principles. And, a few of those are to bring everyone along by incorporating feedback from your departments and your administrative staff and your leadership. So obviously, that having mission-driven core services, making the customer the focus of your programs and management, and employee accountability are important because they're demonstrated here as your guiding principles. But that can only be proven to have happened with the right performance measurement in place. And so, we really plan to use technology where needed. We don't want to make anything too difficult or complex, but we want to be able to manage, the performance data that you have in any new performance data that you plan to start collecting. So that really is, our project scope and the goals for this particular project. Can we move to the next slide, please? So we launched phase 1 in July of 2022, and that's where we met with a lot of CAS staff and former members of your planning board. And the goal there was really to understand the history of past performance measurement efforts and, the Commission's goals for this project. And from there, we did more in-depth interviews to gather perspectives about performance management, really learn about any barriers or drivers to this particular project. We also asked about internal pain points. How are there, issues? Are there any issues impacting your customers? What customer service related issues? At that time, I think there was some question about sports facilities and things of that manner. How often those sports fields are up and running? Were they meeting the needs of your clients? And so that was a primary focus of our analysis in phase 1. So from there, what did we find? We found that there were obviously many strategies and plans, which is great. It means you're thinking about, the goals that you want to achieve. But in concert, we didn't see that there were many metrics to identify whether or not those goals were achieved. In some cases, performance measures were listed in your annual budget books, but it was not always clear what outcomes those measures were tracking. And it really didn't seem like the information was being used for continuous improvement purposes. We also found that there wasn't a lot of buy-in for a centralized performance management framework at that time. And I think it was partially due to the lack of agreement on what it should look like. And there was also a belief that no one was asking for this particular information. And while these are some barriers that need to be acknowledged, we think that they can all be overcome because every single person that we spoke with during this particular phase saw the value of performance management. They said that it was really important because it means that you care about your work. Everyone agreed that this was something that needed to be done, but there was just, additional assistance needed in terms of how to roll this out. So listed here are a few of our key recommendations, and I won't read them all off because we've actually started implementing many of them that we'll discuss on the next slide. if we can advance. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question here?
Sure.
So this is Mitra Peduim. I'm from the Montgomery side, one of the commissioners. You said the period of performance. Could you go back to phase one? Because suddenly the date was changed. Was July 22 to January 23. That means that you have almost conducted your interviews. The Montgomery County Planning Board, especially our chair, is new. And I do not know if you have had a chance to discuss and interview the new board for Montgomery County.
We have not. So in phase one, we spoke with stakeholders who were in place at that time. So a lot of the interviews were conducted over, I believe, between October and December of last year. So if that chair was not in place, it was likely we did not get that person's perspective. We spoke with the chair at the time.
Well, I think since you still have another couple of 1.5 months left, I recommend that you interview the new planning board for Montgomery County. I think it is important that you get the new perspective of the new leadership in Montgomery County. That's my suggestion that we have. And the other question that I have is that you talked about it's mostly to get performance management of the key initiatives. Do you have any examples of these initiatives? I think those are important that we could understand exactly what initiatives you are discussing, that we would be able to provide informed, information or feedback for you.
Yeah, so definitely love your idea of speaking with additional people. We'll have to speak with Asantha about what that will ultimately look like, but obviously all perspectives are welcome. In terms of initiatives, I would say that one of the key ones that we really think is important is sustainability. And sustainability is a great example of how the commission is actually collaborating across the board, because you have teams from both Prince George's County and Montgomery County that are involved in that particular initiative. And obviously, sustainability is an area that's highlighted in your National Parks and Recreation Gold Medal application. They ask several questions, not only about performance management and how you're measuring progress, but what are we doing in terms of sustainability, climate change, things like that. So that's just one example.
So when you talk sustainability, you're actually talking about climate change and all the things that are related to climate change, correct?
When we're talking about sustainability, we're talking about the full universe of everything that impacts what's in that particular sustainability plan. So there's, somewhat climate change. There are also other factors that it seems like everybody in the organization have agreed that are important and that need to be tracked and measured in some way.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that plan?
Well, I don't know what is the other things. That's why we were asking. Maybe because you have discussed it with the other ones and we don't know exactly what the scope of these key initiatives are. I think it is important for us that we are new, we understand the scope of the initiatives that you would be working on, that we would be able to provide an informed feedback for you, that what is important and what is included in the scope of the work that you would be doing.
Well, the initiative was already in place prior to our being hired. So when you think about planning and you think about goal setting and identifying objectives, there has to be a way to measure whether or not those occurred. Did we achieve the goals that we set out to accomplish? Where are we? What are the project milestones? Things of that nature. So performance measurement is not specific to sustainability or any one initiative. It's something that has to be applied across the board, because we can't say that we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and our customers are expecting to see certain results, but we don't have any way to measure whether or not we achieve. So what we're trying to drive home here is that the commission does a wonderful job of speaking to clients and planning and having that information. But sometimes we don't have performance measures to ensure that we're moving in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
I'm
let
just,
me, Commissioner, let me jump in one sec, because I so appreciate your questions, and I think that's exactly why we're having this presentation, because this has been going on for a while, but we've gone through lots and lots of leadership changes. So partly what we want to do with Asantha and Artie and I have been talking about is we want to bring this back to leadership, because we may need to, it's not restart a process, but it's re-engage leadership because it's a new leadership team. So very much in line with what you're saying, and that's why we're here.
okay, it would be important because I think for the new board for Montgomery County, that we understand what is this project is about. And it sounds great. Please don't get me wrong. I am very much interested. This is something that is very close to my heart. I just want you to understand that. Since it is so close to my heart, and I have personally worked on initiatives like that, and I truly believe in performance measure, so I care. And that's why I'm asking these questions. I like to understand what is the scope and what was the need and what is the outcome that we are looking for, that we would be able to provide you informed feedback. Right now, everything looks really fine to me, but I cannot relate to it because I don't know the purpose and I don't know the background. I think it would have been very helpful if we had got some background before we go to this.
Commissioner Pettaween, this is Asantha. I can provide you some information on the specific background. This is the initial step because we realized you came on board and there were a lot of things already in process. So this is our briefing to you, but the three main areas are that were decided upon, and we can relook at it again, but they were sustainability based off of the sustainability plans that our commission has put together in alignment with Montgomery and Prince George's counties, so that's the first area. Human resources, specifically as it pertains to workers' comp, and also to time to recruit. And then the third area is procurement, specifically with respect to supplier diversity, since that program is being stood up. We are required to do a report every quarter on that. So it aligned very well with putting together performance measurements. So as the governor indicated, instead of every year looking to see how much progress you've made, maybe every month or even every 2 weeks. And so we did not have this capability internally. And so we wanted to go to somebody who knew how to set something like this up. And these were all areas that were decided upon by the commissioners and department heads. And we can relook at the scope. We looked at everything such as, field usage and all that other stuff, but it was determined that the departments weren't ready for that type of measurement of those types of things. So we focused on these three areas, which are areas that CAS oversees. So we wanted to first stand up a capability, get some of the training under our belts, as well as providing that training to some of the departmental staff so that we're not wasting time, money, and resources in trying to put this together, that we are very focused. But I would be happy to give you and the rest of the Montgomery Planning Board a briefing in more detail as well. But we wanted to first give you this overview from the consultants. Thank you.
Okay, I really appreciate. Thank you. That's very helpful. So those initiatives was something that it worked out with the departments to pick those initiatives.
Yes,
and
it was a collective decision.
okay. And then it's the bottom line is that you be able, and I love the idea of dashboarding and, deciding that rather than waiting 6 months or a year, you do like a monthly dashboarding that I guess with some kind of technology system that I heard you were talking about, to push this information to the appropriate staff, that how we are doing and how they, with some recommendation that how they could get better, or where are the areas that they are falling short, I hope.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Ms. Hammond, back to you.
All right. So we're in phase 2, which is great. So that means we're kicking off a lot of the things that we recommended from phase 1. And part of that is making sure that we're training staff. You have to learn how to apply these concepts effectively in order for it to work. And we're actually doing the measurement. And then we're also working with the commission to identify some recommendations for a system that will help pull all of this information together. And so we started out with training. Training was attended by teams, the teams identified for the initiatives. We also met with the sustainability teams just to really discuss the performance measurement concepts. We had a really great turnout. The teams were highly engaged and enthusiastic about next steps. Subsequently, from there, we brainstormed with everyone. This is really a process that must be inclusive. We don't come in and say, these are your measures, get started. We really work with teams on program design, understanding how the different areas of the program work together and what key outcomes need to be achieved. And so we did a lot of workshops around those particular program logics. And from there, we come up with smart performance measures. They got to be specific, measurable, attainable, time bound, and those are reflective of what it means to have good performance measures. They also have to be something that you all want to see. We're not going to just be like, here, we publish X amount of documents every year. They have to really be measures that speak to what is the impact on my customers? What are the customers satisfied with my work? Things of that nature. Are we seeing an increase in safety? Are we seeing an increase in injuries? Where are these injuries occurring? Things like that are typically valuable performance data to have when you're making these decisions. We want to make sure that we're funding programs that are helping us reduce risk. We want to make sure that we're funding programs in a way that helps us reduce timelines for hiring. We heard that in many cases, hiring was taking so long that you were actually losing candidates. So this is a perfect opportunity to sit down with, those who are in charge of the processes and understand how things are really working and how we can get these timelines down. And the only way you can do that is if you're tracking what's been happening. And it's not going to be a perfect situation. The data is there, but you're going to need to have conversations around ways to improve these processes. That's what the data does. It tells you where you are, and then you have to have conversations and discussions and employ, different strategies to make sure that you're moving in the right direction. Are there any questions about what we're doing? We're also helping CIS identify a business intelligence tool, and we're hoping that will actually help, automate some of these manual processes. We heard that a lot of times, sometimes it can be very difficult to collect information. And we're hoping that if we can somehow come up with a more centralized way to pull data in and have automated dashboards and have information readily available, this is what your team really wants to see.
Thank you for that questions, commissioners. And again, picking up on Commissioner Pettigrew, there's certainly more opportunity for a more sort of robust engagement, and we'll make sure that happens as well.
Can I also say that because I was actually right before this meeting, I was reviewing the budget for tomorrow's session, and I see that there are some connection and measurements related to this one and the one that it is. Maybe you could also provide that how, if there are some budget initiatives for FY25 that are related to this initiative.
Santha, you want to comment on that?
Yes, we have our presentation tomorrow for the budget in front of the Montgomery Planning Board, so we'd be happy to do that.
Yes, so,
Thank you.
Ms. McGregor, this is Vice Chair Harris. You talked about developing SMART. You have developed SMART performance measures. Has that process been completed, and could you give an example for a specific issue we're trying to work on, an example of some of those SMART performance measures that you have developed?
The performance measures are still being vetted by the team, so I would hesitate to put on record what we're actually going to measure. We just wanted to illustrate the process that we take when we're developing measures. We don't simply just tell your teams what to do. We collaborate. We listen to information about your program. We do our background research, and we really have these brainstorming sessions so that the team can build consensus on what needs to be measured. Because this is really a process where it's an all hands on deck type of situation. You must build consensus. It's not one person that owns everything. It really is an ongoing process that is collaborative. And so once our teams have, reviewed the suggestions that we've made, our recommendations, we're refining some of the existing performance measures. For example, you may just start with measures where you're just measuring, how much you're spending on your budget. You may just be measuring, the number of safety inspections that you've done each year. And that's necessary. But we also want to understand, if you're doing safety inspections, are you seeing compliance? How are we measuring, compliance with safety? How are we measuring, our workmen's compensation claims in relationship to, the average amount spent, things of that nature. So those are some examples of what we look at when we think about outcomes. Other outcomes, obviously, if it's taking you a while to hire, that's going to be an outcome where you want to reduce hiring. So you're going to have measures that are going to track how long it takes. Governor.
Thank you.
Governor O'Malley has his hand up too.
No, I did, but then Sasha explained some of the things. I mean, the lagging indicators, I think we all know, right? We want to reduce our carbon footprint. We want to reduce injuries to employees. We want to increase minority and women business contracting opportunities through the commission. But then the key is, in a collaborative way, so that everybody owns it, rather than being told, this is the way the cabbage is chewed. We have to figure out what the leading actions are that actually drive you to those things. So but there, I spoke when I didn't need to speak because Sasha kind of filled it in anyway. I'm sorry. Thanks.
No, thank you for that. That was spot on, because I mean, what we see is that when you're not engaging the people that are involved in the process, I mean, in my past experience, I've seen, and I've come into teams and they're measuring things and they don't know why. And so one of the artifacts that we give to the teams is what we call a logic model document. And so it pretty much encapsulates everything about the program, how all of the different elements of the program works together, and then the associated performance measures for those different outcomes. A lot of teams find this valuable because we often don't have time to think about how the work that we do actually links to certain outcomes. And so that puts it all into one place, and then you have associated performance measures with those outcomes, and in some cases, outputs. So it's really a team effort.
If I could also add, we're in the middle of phase 2. It doesn't end until the end of December. So Guidehouse is really helping us kind of work backwards. We know what the outcomes are, but we're also looking to see what data we have and what we should be measuring, because you could be measuring something and it really isn't as related to your outcome as something else. So that is something that Guidehouse is helping us discern, and what kind of software then, based on what we're measuring, would be the best product to use so that we could put the proper dashboards together. So we're right in the middle of that process right now.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay, commissioners, other questions for the team? No other questions. All right. Anything else you want to bring to us? You got next step.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Just
yes, sir.
With regards to ensuring supplier diversity, what exactly, is there any consideration as to how you're going to do that? Or is that something that still needs to be studied?
Yes, there is. Right now, I think the local small business data is something that we're already collecting this data, although we don't have the goals as yet. The disparity study will be finished along with MDOT this coming year, is what we're told. And there are some budgetary requests related to that program as well, the supplier diversity program. So when that data becomes available, we will put together the outcomes that we're going to be looking for, but we're already in the process of measuring as far as procurement, how much procurement they're doing with minority businesses, women-owned businesses, disability businesses. All of those are already in the process of being measured.
Okay. The reason I asked is something is that when I was on the WSSC board, there was a problem with a similar problem in terms of a lack of diversity among the contractors. And one thing that was instituted by the board that assisted in attracting more minority contractors or diverse contractors was to break up the big contracts. So at one time, WSSC basically had Montgomery County and Prince George's County, and when they let out contracts, it would be for the entire county. And so most minority suppliers were not able to satisfy the entire contract. So what was done is we broke the county up into separate sections so that smaller contractors could bid. So that might be something to consider with regards to the longer contract or the larger contracts that the commission lets.
Yep, good tactic.
Yeah,
Okay,
that is
yeah.
nice.
And I would love to talk to you about that more and have our supplier diversity team talk to you more about that, Commissioner Giraldo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dorner.
Yeah, I have one kind of question related to the supplier stuff, but then another kind of separate question. On the supplier side, I was wondering, just data, Santa, is there something at like a state level that you can tie into, like a database? Because at least in federal acquisitions, when we do it for federal agencies, we have like lists that our procurement officers can go to that are like registered minority or women-owned businesses or vets. And we can pull from there. So I don't know if there's something like that at the state level. I'm just not familiar with it, and that might be helpful if so. And then the other question is, in terms of systems, is there something that Guidehouse has kind of pinpointed as, here's the one system that we think you all could benefit the most from, kind of walking through as sort of a case example? Because we've talked about a couple of different things today in terms of like where the metrics would be most useful, but I'm interested particularly like maybe HR, like maybe it's hiring, or what are the kind of places that we think would be the best focused aspects that you're kind of picking up on in phase 2 leading into phase 3, just so we have kind of an idea of where you're going.
Well, Commissioner Dorner, I can answer the first question for you. Absolutely. MDOT does have a supplier diversity list, and we already have a copy of that. We are working very closely with MDOT on our disparity study, but also with that office and their MBE office in general. So we do have that information, and we are utilizing that. And then I'll let Sasha talk about the second phase, or second part of it.
Yeah, so from my perspective, we need to focus in on everything. I mean, you have goals for every particular area of your work, so there needs to be a way to measure. But for this particular project, again, we're focused on supplier diversity. We're focused on several elements under HR, recruitment, and selection, and obviously workmen's compensation, and then the other cross-collaborative initiative, which is sustainability. And those were areas, once again, that were identified by the stakeholders that we spoke to in phase 1. So obviously there's a very much interest in learning more about these areas and a need to collect information. In terms of a system, we want to make sure that we're not just reporting out and never having discussions. And so there's been some interest in a stat type of approach. That's where you would pull data monthly and have these conversations about results. And then conversely, you're going to need some sort of IT tool that supports it. Because if it's all manual, if you've just got a ton of spreadsheets, unfortunately, it's probably not going to be sustainable because it's going to be too much work to maintain all of that. So we, part of our work for phase 2C and also into phase 3, when we think about implementation, is to really get to the point where we're refining business processes within CAS so that we can make sure that we have the right data in the right format and we're able to report that out to leadership. If we're having dashboards, there has to be some way for the information to speak to the dashboards. So there has to be some support in that way to get the system up to speed to be able to pull in that particular data. There could also be external reporting and data that may need to go into this dashboard. But a lot of that is still being discussed. And so, we'll be providing our recommendations to Asantha and her team. And from there, they'll decide what is the best business intelligence tool or system to support this work.
Thank you. Commissioner Pettaween?
In regard to this system, because I see that you're, looking to see that what is the best system to create dashboarding. I'm wondering that if the existing system that we already have, because one of the most difficult thing is to extract the data. And if you're extracting the data, you're not going to be on the real data because it's always, it's dependent to the time you extract the data. But if you use the existing systems to provide you dashboarding, so I am not sure that where this data comes from. If they come from ERP, and if we still have Infor, they do have a module in dashboarding that is already integrated with the existing system. And you don't have to extract the data. You could just, because it's part of the same system, they could provide you the real data anytime that you want to create these dashboardings. And in my opinion, I'm not an IT person, but I have worked with different systems. That would be the most effective. And I know that Montgomery side, they have their, EAM, the assessment management system, that they're specifically working on these data coordinate it. They actually, when they have their budget, they are creating a separate unit just for these data and how to get the data and how to make the data and dashboard available and accessible to people that actually enter the data, because to collect the data is very difficult and you have to make it accessible for people that they could put the right data in, that you could collect them and then create your dashboard. So I think Montgomery side is working on some aspect of it. It may not be exactly your the initiative that you're working, because right now it's just specific to CAS, but it's something to look into that we don't go really far apart.
Could I address that, Commissioner Pettaween? I would love to get your input. We are looking at all the data in ERP and EAM. We're in the midst of that process. We had opened this up to all departments, so it isn't just CAS. So for instance, the sustainability data is going to come from the departments, but this is what, at the time, the departments wanted us, CAS, to focus on. So once we figure out where all the different data is going to be coming from the EAM, ERP, because it will be from different systems, we're trying to figure out whether Power BI or whatever might be the best tool based on the data and where it's coming from. We don't want to have to recreate or re-enter data. That would be a waste of time and resources. So I think we realize that, but we don't have that answer as yet. But I would love for our team to sit down, because I know you have a lot of background in this, and I would love for our team to sit down with you to talk about, maybe some of the suggestions you have along those lines, and also to offer that, we have Guidehouse as a consultant, and we'd be happy to share, and I'm sure they would be happy to help with the training with Montgomery Parks as they're standing up their system as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I want to join with that. We always saw this a year and a half ago. We saw this as a way in to help us make sense. We would learn how best to do this process using the consultants, and then there's all sorts of budget considerations, but we saw this as a first step, and then we would, working with the departments, figure out the ways to sort of step up our dashboarding and our measurements in all sorts of ways. Okay, any other questions? Ms. Hammond, you have more in this item?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. We just want to say that obviously phase 3 is still kind of like in question because we're not done with phase 2. So, going forward, we've already seen a few areas where, we would potentially support CAS and the rest of the commission if need be. And, again, you're going to need some sort of governance framework. So obviously we'd work with the teams there to make sure that we have actionable processes and procedures in place, make sure that roles and responsibilities are explained effectively. It's really necessary to make sure that this works and gets off the ground and there's proper communication around everything. And then, another big focus of phase 3 is really going to be, just working with the teams to make sure that we can collect the right data and analyze it in a reliable way, because we don't want a garbage in, garbage out type of situation. Want to make sure that the data is valid and reliable and organized in a way that it can work with the ultimate IT system or business intelligence tool that's selected. And then finally, it's really going to be about developing and delivering that particular dashboard. There'll be conversations with the leadership team to really make sure that we're honing in on the various insights that are important to you. The dashboard might not include each and every performance measure for every program. There could be opportunities for a, executive level dashboard. There could be opportunities for smaller, more programmatic focused dashboards. And so, it'll be really important to work with you all further just to discuss, what would work best and meet your particular needs. And then finally, this all has to be incorporated into regular meetings. Like, we don't want to get to the point where we've done all of this work and no one knows what's going on. So there have to be discussions, regular discussions about where we are. Performance management is ongoing. So once we get all of this up and running and we can start those monthly meetings, the better.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions before we wrap up in this item? No questions. Any final words, Ms. Hammond, Ms. McGregor, Governor? Any final thoughts, reactions from you? All right.
I just want to say it's been great working with you all. We hope the relationship continues. It's important to me because I live here, so I want to see, the commission do well. So thank you all again. And
Thank you.
please reach out to us if you have any questions.
Well,
Thank you all for the
appreciate
time.
all the hard work, and we're looking forward to the continuing collaboration.
Awesome.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay, Commissioners, we'll move on to the next item of the agenda. Thanks, everybody. And Governor, safe travels. Next item on our agenda is 5B. This is the Resolution 2322, adoption of the Montgomery County Pedestrian Master Plan. Your staff member, Mr. Glazer, who's going to be presenting on this item if there's a presentation. Is there a presentation on this item?
One second.
Hello, Eli Glazier. For the record, there is no presentation for this item.
Sorry if there's a lag in my technology, but good morning and take it away.
No, sorry, go for it. Yeah.
Good morning, Planning Board members and commissioners. Tanya Stern, Acting Planning Director with the Montgomery County Planning Department. We do not have an actual presentation related to the Pedestrian Master Plan. This item is being presented to you as the final step for the adoption of the Pedestrian Master Plan. The County Council has already adopted it, and so it goes back to the Commission for final adoption. We are very excited about the completion of this plan. This is the very first countywide pedestrian master plan for Montgomery County. It includes quite a number of different strategies and recommendations to make sure that walking and rolling is safe, attractive, and accessible for residents throughout the county, regardless of whether they live in urbanized areas, suburban communities, or in our rural area in the Ag Reserve. So again, the resolution is included in the packet that includes the changes that the county council made to the plan and that they adopted as part of the final plan. And so we look forward to the commission's final adoption of the pedestrian master plan. And we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Appreciate it. Commissioners, any questions on this item? If there are no questions, then this is an action item. And what is your pleasure? Oh, we do have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Ms. Stern, have you been able to share this with your compatriots over in the Prince George's side? Because we haven't had a pedestrian plan like this, and you guys have made a lot of work on this, and that would be something that would be really useful potentially for our side of the commission to take under advisement and consideration.
Yes, so we have, as part of the process of proceeding towards the adoption of this plan, we shared the plan document at various stages with the sort of surrounding counties outside of Montgomery County, including Prince George's County, but we would be very happy to coordinate a bit more directly with sort of the active transportation staff in the Prince George's County Planning Department.
Yeah, I think it'd be fantastic. Particularly, my colleague Commissioner Giraldo always asks about the width of sidewalks and stuff, and I know that's something that you considered in there. There are lots of things that we ask on a routine basis in commission, or in, I guess, our planning board sessions. So having a way to think about like how do we actually formalize some of these ideas, and what sort of best practices would be really useful, I believe.
We're very happy to do that. And I also wanted to mention, since you mentioned the width of sidewalks, we have another set of guidelines, the Complete Streets Design Guide, which we completed and developed in coordination with Montgomery County Department of Transportation, which does have that very granular detail to guide what types of road and other road, pedestrian, bike infrastructure should be along different types of roads. We use that as an opportunity to update the entire street typology for Montgomery County, and that is actually has already been incorporated, will continue to be incorporated into the county's road code. So we're happy to also share that with our colleagues in Prince George's Planning, along with the pedestrian master plan. They are intended to work in coordination with each other, along with our bicycle master plan that was already adopted a few years ago.
That's great.
Yeah, that'd be great. I know there's plenty of stuff.
We have our acting planning director, Suzanne King, has her. I may be interrupting. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that'd be great. I know there's plenty of other things besides the sidewalk widths and stuff that are in the plan. Like I know there's crosswalk design and stuff. That was something I was talking about, I think, last week or the week before. So I look forward to doing that and seeing more on this and on our side.
I second that.
And aren't they also all on our website too?
Yes, they are. They are available
Thank you.
on our
I'm
website.
sorry, I was having technology issues again. We have our acting planning director, Suzanne King, has her hand up as well. Ms. King?
Yeah, so our technology is just up and running, so hopefully everyone can hear me. Good afternoon. I just wanted to let you know that that will be part of our master plan of transportation. So I just wanted to let you know that will be forthcoming. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then commissioners, we have a resolution before us. What is your pleasure?
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
I second.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Giraldo, second, I believe, by Vice Chair Harris. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Motion and second, discussion of the motion. Seeing none, Mr. Adams, could you call the roll, please?
Chair Shapiro.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Harris.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartley.
Aye.
Commissioner Pettawee.
Aye.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is Resolution 2324, Merit System Board Chair reappointment, Tanya Upthegrove Coleman. Ms. King, anything you need to bring to us on this item or any questions for Ms. King, Commissioners?
There is nothing I need to bring, just that for the record, my name is Bonnie King. I'm the manager of classification and compensation team within the Department of Human Resources and Management. And I am requesting the Commission's approval of the reappointment for Ms. Tanya Upthegrove Coleman as Chair of the Merit System Board for a 4-year term beginning December 1st, 2023 and ending December 1st, 2027. All other terms and conditions of her contract remain the same.
Great, thank you, Ms. King. Commissioners, any questions? If there are no questions, what is your pleasure on this item?
Move approval as indicated by Ms. King.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Bailey, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Adams, could you call the roll, please?
Chair Shapiro?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Bailey?
Aye.
Commissioner Dorner?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo?
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris?
Aye.
Commissioner Bartley?
We got an aye.
Sorry. Commissioner Pettaway?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you both. 7-0. Motion passes.
Great. I want to thank Ms. Upthegrove Coleman for her continuing service, and thank you, Ms. King. Next item on our agenda, Resolution 23-25, Employer Contribution to the Employees Retirement System. We have Andrea Rose, and we have Chiron as well. Mr. Nelson, good to see you. Ms. Rose, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Shapiro. We want to be respectful of the Commission's time. We were told to plan for about 15 minutes today. Is that still okay?
Still okay.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Andrea Rose, Executive Director for the Employees Retirement System. And we're here today on behalf of the Board of Trustees to recommend the Commission approve Resolution 2325, which adopts an employer contribution for fiscal year 2025. Annually, the retirement system conducts an independent actuarial valuation to determine the employer contribution that's required to ensure sufficient assets are available to fund the future benefits. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Nelson, Janet Crana, and Jana Bowers from Chiron, and they're going to walk you through the valuation results and answer any of your questions regarding this recommendation today.
Great. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you to the commissioners for having us here today. I'm going to share my screen. Right there. So this is our presentation, as Andrea mentioned, to determine the contribution for the fiscal year 2025. I am going to walk through the historical review of the system, talk about a few of the risks, and then get into the June 30th, 2023 actual evaluation results and into any projections to see where the system might be headed.
Mr. Nelson, hold on. Mr. Nelson, hold on 1 second. I just want to frame this just a little bit, which is for commissioners, just know that this has already gone through the ERS Board of Trustees, myself, Commissioner Hedrick. So there has been, I just don't want you to think that this hasn't been sort of considered and vetted already, but we're certainly pleased to bring this to the board and look forward to any questions and thoughts and reactions you all have. And Mr. Nelson, take it away.
Thank you. So first, take a quick look at what the actual evaluation process is in order to determine the contribution for the year. We collect all of the data, membership data, provisions of the plan, and the asset information, review the assumptions, both demographic and economic, determine what the liabilities are of the system, compare that to what the current value of assets is, and from there we can determine what the contribution for the year will be. A few of the risks to the system, most notably, will always be the investment risk. How do the assets perform over time will be the biggest driver of what the contributions are each year and every year into the future. Other risks that we will mention, the longevity and demographic risk. You'll see that the demographic risk actually stood out a little bit more this year with some of the cost of living and salary increases that led to an increase in liabilities. Then contribution risk, plan change risk, and the assumption change risk. All of these are highlighted in a little bit more detail within the valuation report, but we just wanted to mention them here today in our presentation. Look at the membership trends over the past 10 years. You can see that these bars are the population and how it's been increasing. The bottom section in teal are the active participants. They've increased about 6% in total over the entire 10-year period, as opposed to the in-pay participants. This is any retirees or beneficiaries that are receiving payments. They have been increasing on average about 4% per year. This is very expected within a pension system. The size of the active population typically doesn't need to grow very much. The resources that are being used to continue with the work that needs to be accomplished of the system is okay. But as people progress throughout their career and retire, that's why the inactive population continues to grow. And those retirees are then replaced with new active participants. The line going across the middle is what we refer to as the support ratio. So this is the ratio of the inactive population versus the active population. And we're getting very close to a 1-to-1 ratio, same number of inactives as active participants. And again, this is very expected within a pension system for this ratio to continuously increase over time. The assets and liabilities of the system, the gray bars are the liabilities, and the two lines going across are the values of assets. The first one, the orange, is the market value of assets. So these are the numbers that the auditors and financial advisors actually report on. But in order to determine the contributions, we actually use a smoothed value of assets. So we factor in all of the gains and losses over the past 5 years and help smooth out the assets over time so that the contribution isn't as volatile. You can see particularly from 2020 to 2021, back to 2022, that large swing in how the market value of assets performed. That would cause significant volatility within the contribution as well, and we want to try to mitigate as much of that as possible. The percentages going across the bottom are the discount rates that are used to determine the liabilities, starting at 7.3% back in 2014. The board for the system has been continuously reducing what this discount rate is in order to take a more conservative approach towards their investments and how the liabilities will be. The percentages on top are the funded ratios, so the percentage of assets to the liabilities from year to year. And we've stayed right around 90%, a little bit above for most years, even while reducing that discount rate from year to year. This is a look at the discount rate in comparison to a lot of other state and local pension plans. This is a survey of about 200 plans around the country and how the discount rates have changed over time. Back in 2001, the median discount rate was about 8%, right where the green meets the blue bars, where in the employees' retirement system was significantly less than that, about 7.5% back in 2002, which was the first year that we had data for, as shown by the gold diamonds here. Moving up to 2022 and 2023, the median for all public plans has dropped to about 7%, but the employees' retirement system for the commission has stayed ahead of the trend, is at 6.7% for 2022 and 2023. The reason the bars aren't showing up for 2023 is we just don't have all of the data yet from all of the plans around the country as of now. Look at the funded ratio of how the retirement system has compared to those around the country. we're staying in the top quartile, above the 75th percentile. And this does not take into account the fact that your discount rate is significantly lower than the median as well. So this is a very good funded position to have, both in absolute terms of around 90%, but also compared to all the peer systems around the country. This system is very well funded, and it's thanks to the commission voting to approve the recommended contributions every year. Getting into the current 2023 results, this is a look at the membership counts. Active population increased about 3% compared to the prior year. This is coming off of about a 4% decrease from 2021 to 2022. So about back to where we were 2 years ago in terms of the active population. The retiree and beneficiary and disabled population has increased about 4% per year, right in line with what our annual increase has been over the past decade, as I mentioned before. And our total population has increased a little bit under 4% from year to year. Getting into some of the liability and asset results for the year, the market value returned about 7.5%, but that smooth value of assets, taking into account the large loss from the year ended June 30th, 2022, was a little bit less than that at 6.36%, resulting in what we refer to as an actuarial loss on investments of about $3.7 million. The bigger driver of the results this year, though, was the actuarial liability loss of $50.4 million, and we'll get into some of the details of that in a little bit. There's also a small plan change for plans C and D regarding the sick leave eligibility that increased the liability about $0.3 million. In the chart below, the two numbers that I want to bring your attention to, the funded ratio on the smooth value of assets decreased from 91% to just under 88%. And then the funded ratio on the market value of assets decreased from about 89.5% to 87%. So we're kind of staying right in line. The market value of assets and the smooth value of assets are very comparable to each other, showing that our smoothing mechanisms are working well, given the large market increases as of 2021, the big decrease as of 2022, and then we were right in line with our expectations for 2023. These pie charts are showing the entire system broken out by the different groups. We have both the inactive and the active populations shown here, split out by each of the 5 different plans. Plan B are the 2 green spots in both charts. The inactive population being the checkerboard look, and the active population being the solid green area. And Plan B is currently still representing about 54% of the total population and 65%, almost 2/3 of the total liability. So the majority is still with Plan B. However, since Plan B has been frozen for about a decade now, all the new non-police members are joining Plan E. So we'll continue to see Plan B shrink over time, particularly the active population and liability, while Plan E continues to increase over time. Taking a look at the changes in the liabilities. Again, as I mentioned before, about $300,000 increase due to the plan amendment for plans C and D, the big actuarial loss for the primarily due to cost of living and salary increases, and then the $33 million benefits and accumulated. That's the benefits earned during the year for about an $84 million total increase in the liabilities. The bottom chart is showing how that $50.4 million loss is broken up into different pieces. The main items that will certainly jump out to everybody, the salary increases for the prior year. So this is just what the data showed that was provided to us of how the pay increased from 2022 to 2023, was just under $13 million. loss in terms of those salaries being higher than what we expected. We then also accounted for the known pay adjustments that were expected to take place during fiscal year 2024, and that added another $20 million to the loss. So just those two pieces of the salary increases between 2023 and 2024 is about 60% of the total loss for the plan. The other big piece of it are the retiree COLAs being more than expected. 90% of the benefits getting paid are still the pre-July 1, 2012 benefits that have a max COLA of 5%. And with inflation being as high as it was for the past couple of years, that COLA is actually maxed out at that 5% versus our assumption of 2.4% per year. And so that created an $18 million loss from the retiree COLA. So between those salary increases and the retiree COLA, we've pretty much accounted for the entire $50 million. Most of the other items pretty much lined up as expected in terms of how the population changed for retirements, terminations, and deaths during the year. This is a good place to stop if there were any questions about how the liability changed from year to year.
Yes.
Commissioners, questions?
I have a question. Did you really set, I don't know if I got it, we had $50 million loss?
Yes. So a $50 million loss in terms of liabilities means that we expect the liability to grow a certain amount each year based on expected salary increases and how we expect the population to change from year to year in terms of retirements, terminations, et cetera. And what happened is that the liabilities increased $50.4 million more than what we were expected because the pay for active participants increased significantly more than expected, and the benefit payments to retirees increased more than what our assumption was for the year.
Is that one of the underlying reason for the increased OPEB or increase in the operating budget? Because again, I was reading the operating budget this morning, and I saw that it was an increase in the liability that for the operating budget. Is that one of the reasons behind that?
The contribution for the system is certainly increasing from year to year. If one of the commissioners would like to comment on the overall budget.
Okay.
I think it's a smidgen. I mean, this is like 5% of like total of liabilities that we have existing. This is just the change in the liabilities that he's talking about right now, not the total amount of the liabilities that we have, which is like a minuscule amount. So, and we approved COLA changes, increases during COVID because we had pretty substantial inflationary challenges as well as salary adjustments. So these were things that we knew a couple years back as we were kind of going through this, that we were just going to have to do this because costs were rising for everyone. And in a realistic kind of grand scheme of things, this is a very small change from the overall liabilities. This is, to me, not
I
that big of a deal.
understand that. My question is that does this impact our FY25 operating budget in regard to, because the actuarial system, when it comes to OPEB or retirement or whatever that we do, I remember that every year we got a number from CAS from the budget, that how it would impact our budget to contribute. I'm saying that is that the reason that it has been increased?
So, Chair, yeah,
That's
Commissioner
the
Bedouin, this is Vice Chair Harris. I was told that was the case, and so here's my question, Patrick. Thank you for presenting this, but you've mentioned several times that the COLA more than expected, X more than expected, but I'm just curious. We probably did expect it, right? Didn't we expect that the numbers would be higher? And that's one of my questions. And the other is that, is there a way that we can get the numbers maybe a couple to 3 weeks earlier? Because here's the issue is that tomorrow we're going to be voting on the budget to send to our final budget for it goes to the full commission tomorrow. We, about 3 weeks ago, looked at draft budgets. And so I think if we could have had these numbers, at least a better guesstimate of these numbers 3 weeks ago, I think it would have changed some of the
Yes.
budgets of the directors of how they were, presenting their budgets, because now it is, I think it was a 2 million, even though a small increase overall, it was the expectation, because I know on the planning department side, I think their budget went up by 2 million, and I'm sure the Prince George's planning went up by a few million. And so if we had known that a couple, 3 weeks ago, or even a little bit earlier, maybe 4 weeks ago, I think some of the directors would have changed some of the other pieces of their budget and maybe not said, well, okay, we want to add X, two new employees or do this. So I know the auditors do something at a certain time, but there's any way maybe in the third quarter or maybe, a little bit earlier, just to make a best guess before we have the final numbers, because a several million dollar swing changes things, like from going to council and saying, okay, our total budget went up by, 7-8% to, went up over 10%. It makes a big difference in how they're planning. So there's those two questions that I have there.
Well, actually, it's Artie, that was exactly my question. If it was related to that, because in the draft it was showing some reduction, and now we have over 2 million increase, and I was wondering if it is because of that. That's what I was asking. Yeah.
I appreciate the questions, but let me turn to both Ms. Rose, but also Ms. Chang Smith for response on that, because I just want to make sure we're having an apples to apples conversation when it comes to how this impacts the budget.
Yeah, can I also dovetail on Chair Shapiro's question? One of the things that we talk about in these actuarial assumptions is the asset side as well. So the asset side has been going up quite substantially and quite well to offset any of the liabilities. And often what we talk about is the funding ratio, which impacts like bond ratings and other things when we go up to Wall Street to ask for more funding. So it might be helpful to put it kind of in perspective of like whether or not that's been altered substantially over the past couple of years with COVID, and particularly this past year.
Thanks for that. So Ms. Rose, but also I don't know if Ms. Chang Smith or anyone else who can sort of address the budget implications from this for us.
As far as my understanding is, yes, it has impacted the budget. A lot of the study is an experience. There's going to be an experience study that comes up, and usually that experience study is based on the past 5 years. But as we know, and Commissioner Dorner had mentioned, because of COVID and all, and inflation, we've had to offer COLAs that were higher than what was anticipated, and in a very short period of time. So this threw off some of the projections. We have talked to the actuaries about maybe increasing those projections moving forward as far as COLA numbers, so that they're not going to be as far off. But as far as moving the time frame of when we can get the estimates, that would be something that I think Ms. Rose and Mr. Nelson would have to address.
Yeah, so in terms of the timing, what the process that happens is we end the fiscal year June 30th, and then staff have about 1 month to sort of scrub the data and get that to Chiron. And so they get that information in early August, but it takes them a good bit of time. And so the results aren't really ready until mid to late October. So I think Patrick can address, I think they turn it around as quickly as they can, but we're all sort of under the gun. We've tried historically to try to shorten up the time frame, but this was sort of the closest we could get. And so we've been doing this for a number of years now, presenting it in November. We weren't able to really shave any more time off of it. Patrick, I'll let you respond.
All right. So to be able to get the final contribution number down to the dollar, basically, that we are presenting today and that we presented last week at the system board meeting, kind of takes about this up until about this time, and it's hard to get those numbers ready anytime earlier than that. However, it was sort of mentioned just now that some of these salary increases are negotiated in advance. And if we can receive any of that information, hey, we're going to give an across-the-board 5% increase to everybody, or these certain members are going to have X% increases as of these dates, we can start preparing our systems to say, okay, how much does that particular increase cost? What does that look like in terms of its impact on the contribution? And we can kind of do that anytime throughout the year. If a month from now, everybody says, oh no, we need to look at these sort of pay increases for everybody, we could run a study to say, all right, that will increase the contribution, that will increase the liabilities and the contributions then by another $1 million, and that could help both the commission and the negotiators with determining, okay, is that something that we can afford, and also on the other side of it, be better prepared for the following year when we come back with our evaluation results and say, okay, well, we knew this $1 million increase because of these salary increases that we were sort of forced into. They increased the contribution, and so everybody is a little bit more prepared for what might be coming up. Those are kind of our two options of how to handle the situation and the timing, so that there's not big surprises, come November.
Thank you, Commissioner Pettawee.
Yeah, Patrick, one more thing that you could add to your assessment is the risk factors. I understand that the time is important and you cannot condense it anymore, but there are certain things that you could put into your estimate or your projection that has made a difference from the previous year. Supposedly, if it was pandemic and we know that inflation would go higher, or if we know that we have had a very volatile market, that the valuation is less, or certain other risk factors that we know that has made that year different than the previous year, we could put those indicators in to do a better projection. When I talked to the budget people, they said that rather than getting a negative, if they knew that, because it put them like in the pressure for what Chair Harris discussed, close to $2.5 to $3 million. That would change a lot what the directors are going to bring their enhancement or their initiatives, because we don't want to go over a specific amount. We don't want to go over 10% or 9% budget increase. And right now it has put the department, I know at least at the Parks Department, in that ratio. And if there are any way that we could have a better estimate of these, it helps the department a lot.
Sure. We can discuss with Ms. Rose after this meeting, any changes that the system staff knows about that in order to help with the projections, and particularly in years when we see large pay increases or large cost of living adjustments upcoming for the retiree population, try to start communicating some of that information as soon as possible. I know back in 2020 when COVID hit and the markets absolutely crashed, we did some studies on, okay, well, we're looking at 0% returns minus 10% returns for the year. How is this going to impact with the contribution? And luckily that year, the market rebounded quickly come April and May. And so a lot of those studies didn't turn out to be as necessary as they initially looked. But yes, anytime that there are drastic changes, either on the liability or asset side, we're happy to look at our projection models and see where things might change.
And commissioners, I'll make sure, I mean, as chair of the Board of Trustees, I'll make sure I work with staff and we'll take all this in consideration and we'll work on changing these systems as we go forward.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any other questions? There's more presentation, I believe.
Yes, so the next 3 slides I'm going to get through kind of quick. They are the contributions. This first slide is the contributions split out by each of the different plans. I'll bring your attention to the far right column. This is the contribution in total. So we look at the gross normal cost, which are the benefits earned during the year, plus any expenses, take out the employee piece of the contribution, and what is left is the employer portion of the contribution for benefits earned during the year. That's about $17.4 million. And then there's the amortization payment, which is to help pay off any of the unfunded liability, just under $16 million for the year. That comes out to a total of $33 million contribution for the year. We give it interest for when that contribution is actually paid, and we end up with a total contribution, employer contribution payable at the end of the year of just over $35.5 million, or just under 18% of payroll. The slide shows that the same contribution split out between the police and non-police participants. And this is probably a little bit more important to help see how things changed from last year to this year. Starting in the far left column, I'm going to focus on the very bottom row, which is the contribution payable at the end of the year, the number that ends up hitting the budget. We're at $28.4 million for fiscal year 2024. If everything had happened exactly as we expected, that contribution would have decreased slightly down to $28.3 million. But then when we take into account the investment loss based on that smooth value of assets, the contribution increased a little bit, almost back to where it was for 2024. Bring in the baseline liability, so that's just the cost of living increase and the pay increases through June 30th, 2023. And you can see this is where the biggest jump happens, particularly those cost of living increases, brings the contribution all the way up to $32.6 million for the year. Adjusting for the pay increases that are known for fiscal year 2024 brings us up to $35.5 million. And then that final small increase for the Plan C sick leave changes gets us to our $35.6 million for the year. We have a couple projections in here. The first one is a baseline projection. This is just assuming everything happens exactly as we expected it to. All of the liabilities increase as expected. The investments return 6.7% every year. And so our funded ratio, as shown in this top chart, increases from 88% up to 96% over the next 20 years. We use a 15-year amortization of the unfunded liability, and we reset that amortization payment every year. So it's kind of a slow process to get us to being 100% funded, but we do work our way up there. The bottom graph shows the contributions. The black line going across is the normal cost, again, the benefits accrued during the year. So you can think of all of the contributions below that black line as being the contributions to pay for those benefits earned, and anything above that black line is the contribution that's going towards paying off that unfunded liability. Next slide is basically just putting numbers behind that prior chart to kind of help see where all the numbers change. And again, with the assumptions that go into it, we show the projections if we earned 1.5% less than what our expected assumption is for investments. Our funded ratio decreases from 88% to 83%. So this shows how much or how important it is for the investments to return, what we are expecting them to, and even that small return or that small difference in return can have a pretty large impact on where the contributions go, going from 36 million to 72 million. So in 20 years, we're going to double what that contribution is in order to keep funding the system. And then a final projection slide showing some volatility in the market. All of these returns average out to just under 6.7%. So this helps to identify how the sequence of returns, as we refer to it, really impacts what that total contribution is going to be from year to year. After a few good years, our funded ratio gets up to 103%, contribution all the way down to $18 million. Then we get what we're labeling here as 2033, a 17, almost 18% negative return. Really sends that contribution. It doubles in 1 year despite the asset smoothing. Funded ratio drops from 101% to 89%, and we have to continuously increase the contributions to help dig out of that hole. So even though we averaged 6.7% for the year, contributions can be highly volatile. If you take a look at the 20-year contribution, here we're showing $752 million over 20 years. The baseline slide was 740 million. So total contributions over the 20 years was pretty similar, but that swings in the annual budgets are quite significant here. So that concludes our prepared remarks. We're happy to answer any questions. I can bring up an Excel file that shows these projections if anybody has that desire. However, I think the ones that we have presented here, show kind of where the contributions could go over time, but we're happy to do whatever the commissioners would like to see.
Thank you, Patrick. Commissioners, questions? I know it's a lot of information.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Dorner.
So I don't necessarily need to see or I'll say thank you for just starting with that, for all the work and the numbers and stuff. And I don't necessarily need to see the Excel document, but I was wondering on the historical projections that you're using, what period of time are you basing the historical returns on?
So
basically, does it include COVID is what I'm mostly interested in.
No, so this period that we're showing here is if for the current year that we're in, the fiscal year ending 2024, equaled the returns that actually happened in 1960, and then through the 60s and the 70s. And we primarily showed this scenario, kind of two reasons. One, we've been having a pretty good year in the markets, so that shows that's represented right here by the initial 1960 year, but also the fact that these 20 years of returns average out to a very similar return as to what our overall long-term assumption is.
Okay, so on what was the average return over that 20-year period from 60 to 79 or whatever you use for the historical basis?
6.68%.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Artie here. Thank you, Patrick, for this. It's very informative and it gives me a better understanding. My only point before was just how do we, do a little heads up toward the end of each year so that we can understand, the risks in the numbers, or if they could have some what ifs, and we're going to work on that. So thank you for this presentation.
Thank you. And I would associate myself with those remarks. Very helpful. Other questions? All right. Anything else you have for us, Mr. Nelson, Ms. Rose?
That is all we have from Chiron.
And thank you for your time. We will definitely, work with Chiron and the commission and try to, see what we can do to get some projections earlier and keep the
Okay,
budget
thank
folks
you.
informed. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And appreciate all the hard work, Ms. Rose, for you, for your staff, and for the consulting team as well, as always. Really appreciate it. So commissioners, we have before us this the resolution. This is an action item. And if there's no further discussion, there may be further discussion. If not, though, what is your pleasure? Manny, you're on mute. There we go. Oh, no.
Oh,
There we
move
go.
approval of the report.
All right.
And thank you very much, Patrick, for a great presentation.
Thank you.
I appreciate your hard work.
A second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Geraldo, a second by Commissioner Dorner. Discussion on the motion. And the motion is to support the resolution 23-25, employee contribution to the employees' retirement system. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Adams, can you call the roll, please?
Chair Shapiro.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Harris.
Aye.
Commissioner Bartley.
Aye.
Commissioner
Got
Pettaway.
it.
Aye.
7-0, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Ms. Rose. Again, thanks to the team and thanks to the staff.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next item, final action item and presentation item is we have amendments to practice 2-24 ethics. We have Ms. Harvin, Mr. Beckham. Floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. We are before you today to ask your approval of revisions to Practice 224, which creates a comprehensive code of ethics. These documents are available at Circle Page 87 in your packet. These provisions are required by state law, which sets forth that the commission, i.e. a bi-county agency, must adopt provisions that are also applicable to public officials. The updates will incorporate conflict of interest provisions that were already existing. They will also clarify existing provisions and place it in an omnibus document for ease of location. As it's currently situated, we have several policies that address these issues, so having basically a one-stop shop, so to speak, would certainly help our employees and members of the public who would like to know where to look. There will be certain policies that are not contained in this comprehensive / omnibus code of ethics. So, for example, our policy 580, which contains our lobbying provisions, are not contained in it, and there are a couple of others that are not contained. But those policies are ones that are primarily outward-facing, whereas the Code of Ethics is an inward-facing document. Policy staff have worked very hard over quite a few months with the departments, primarily with the Office of the General Counsel, on making these updates. And in fact, during the process, staff received over 80 comments. So it was a very, very involved process. And those comments and/or questions have been addressed or otherwise resolved in the packet of materials that are in front of you. So with me today, and I just realized I forgot to introduce myself, Tracy Harvin, Corporate Policy and Management Operations Director for the record. And with me, I have the Corporate Policy and Archives Chief, Michael Beckham, along with our Policy Analyst, Michael Dokes, and Mr. Robert Stevens. We have a presentation for you that will highlight the changes. And after we finish, we are going, again, to ask you to approve this comprehensive code of ethics. Michael?
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. Michael Beckham for the record. Presenting with me this morning is Michael Dokes. As Tracy mentioned, we have a PowerPoint presentation to review our proposed code of ethics. So today, our agenda is going to be asking approval of this proposed practice 224. We're also going to discuss background on this project, summary of changes, and then next steps. So with the Commission's approval on this proposed code of ethics, we will promulgate it and issue it to the entire workforce. As Tracy mentioned, in working in this project, we worked closely with the legal department, who was pivotal in helping us bring this project to fruition. Also, the departments provided a lot of input, and it was quite helpful in receiving that and updating the practice. Also, as Tracy mentioned, these updates are to comply with the Maryland Public Ethics Law. You'll see throughout the presentation in the proposed changes, text in red, and that red text is to mirror the provisions that are applicable to state employees, and that is the standard that the agency has to meet. Also, the agency has to certify on an annual basis that our conflicts of interest provisions do meet the standards that are applicable to state employees. And so in making our updates, we benchmark the best practices also of Montgomery County and Prince George's County as we sit in these jurisdictions. And as a result, what we are doing is combining and consolidating 8 policies into one so that staff have one place to go to so they understand the ethical standards of conduct so that they can avoid conflicts of interest. The agency's foundation for ethics dates back to the 1970s with the adoption of the Maryland Public Ethics Law. As I mentioned also, we assess the codes of Montgomery County and Prince George's County. The Merit System Rules and Regulations also has provisions related to ethics. And then over the decades, the agency has issued a number of practices, procedures, and notices related to ethics. And as you can see in the next slide, what we are proposing to do is to combine these 8 different practices into one comprehensive code of ethics. Also, as Tracy mentioned, you can see on the right-hand side of your screen a number of policies that will remain outside of the code of ethics because they are outward-facing. So who is subject to the code of ethics? It's applicable to all employees, which for the purposes of this practices means commissioners, appointed officials, represented and non-represented merit system employees, as well as contract employees. For volunteers, the code of ethics provisions requiring them to avoid actual or perceived conflicts of interest applies. Also, the practice mentions that for represented merit system employees, so McGeo represented and FOP represented employees, their collective bargaining agreements will always control if there's ever a conflict. And then finally, there are 2 different provisions in the Maryland Code that apply directly to commissioners, which this Code of Ethics meets those standards of. I will now turn over to Michael Dokes, who is going to review a summary of changes on key topics throughout our Code of Ethics.
So good morning, Commissioners, the Executive Director, and staff. So at this time, you'll see on your screen a list of 14 topic areas. As Mr. Beckham mentioned, these particular policy issues, items, if you will, were brought over from 8 plus existing policies into this one comprehensive code of ethics that the planning, that the policy office and the Office of General Counsel worked on together. I would point out that the first 7 items have more substantive changes in them, whereas the latter 7, 8 through 14, have fewer changes, essentially brought over from existing policies, pretty much intact. There are a few exceptions that I'll point out as we get to that particular topic area. The ethics officer particularly is a new item that we'll talk about in more detail at that time. So starting with topic 1, standard of conduct. I would also point out that each topic is divided into current and proposed. So I'll talk a little bit about the current and proposed. I'm going to try also to move swiftly and not point out everything that is on the screen, but just the major items, just in the interest of time. I would also point out that there are Yes.
Mr. Dokes, let me jump in for 1 sec.
Yes.
Commissioners, because these are such discrete items, there's 14 of them, and as Mr. Dokes says, the last 7 are, a lot of them are actually pretty technical. But I would say if you have questions on any of these items, ask them as they come along.
Yes. Thank you very much. So yes, please interrupt at any point in time and ask any questions, as Commissioner just pointed out. There are hypotheticals that follow a number of these topic areas. Please let me know if the topic is clear enough and we can skip the hypothetical. We're prepared to present them, or we were asked to provide examples, and I would be happy to do so. But just in the interest of time, just let me know if you want me to move on. So the first topic is on the current policy with regard to standard of conduct, employees are required to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest, and that has to do with using their public office for private gain or that of another, and they are also prohibited from giving preferential treatment specifically to a vendor, and that's how the current policy is couched. We're proposing and also, and some of these modifications are minor modifications coupled with with clarifications. So we've clarified the first point to say this preferential treatment doesn't just apply to a vendor, it applies to any external party. So no preferential treatment to vendors as well as any other external party. We want to point out that the supplier diversity program is excluded from this prohibition because the Commission doesn't want to put up roadblocks that would prevent assisting minority-owned, veteran-owned, women-owned, disabled-owned businesses, particularly our local businesses as well. We also have introduced specific items that would present a conflict of interest. And as Mike Beckham mentioned, the red indicates that we are mirroring the state. So there are a total of 8 conflicts listed in the policy itself. Three are listed here. And these would be instances where an employee or an official would need to recuse themselves because of one of these particular types of conflicts. And so one, for example, the owner, the employee or a family member owns a business that comes before the commission or the planning board or some other business matter is being reviewed. And so an employee is involved in that, has some role in that, would need to recuse themselves from participation. Secondly, if the employee or family member is a creditor or has a creditor relationship with an entity. And then third, if there's the employee or family member is seeking employment from that entity, that employee would need to recuse themselves. That said, there are instances where an employee or official could be allowed to act. They would need to disclose the conflict if one of these conditions exists, one of which they're required by law to act. There may be, we want to acknowledge that there could be situations that exists. Secondly, is the only person, because of their position, for example, that is authorized to act on a particular matter. And then third, it would leave the body with less than a quorum. In those instances, the disclosure would take place, and then following the particular situation, the ethics officer would need to be notified that this conflict of interest occurred and that it was disclosed, and the employer official was allowed to proceed. So
Mr. Dokes, just to be clear, all three of those are just things we're carrying in from the state code.
Yes. Anything in red came directly from the state code.
Okay.
There is a hypothetical on this. I can go through it if you like me to, or I could go on to the next topic.
No, don't bother, but we may have questions of the item before we move on. Commissioners, any questions on this first one?
Okay.
No questions? Okay, you can keep moving.
Okay, so we can go to topic 2. Topic 2 is solicitation of gifts from external parties. Following solicitation discussion, we're going to talk about accepting gifts. So just to make that distinction, this is soliciting gifts. Under current policy, it's prohibited flat out. The proposed change is to allow it. under certain conditions. The department head could approve it, a solicitation of an external party, provided it supports the commission's mission or program. It prevents employees who are involved in the procurement or regulatory duties from participating in any type of solicitation. There can be no personal benefit to any employee, and any funds that are collected or gifts would have to be accounted for according to commission finance principles. Topic 3.
Right, questions?
Yeah, any questions? Sorry.
No questions, you can keep going.
Okay. Topic 3, the flip side of solicitation is accepting gifts from restricted external parties. Under current policy, an employee may not accept a gift of more than the nominal value from a restricted external party, defined as an entity who has or is seeking business with the commission or is regulated by the commission. The nominal value amount is currently $75. However, there are exceptions to the rule, and there are a few here. There are 11 in all. I'll just point out a couple of them. One is that gifts due to obvious personal relationships would be allowed. Attendance at an event that's approved by the executive director is allowed, and honoraria for speaking at an event is allowed. There are others on the screen, as you see, and so we do have proposed amendments that I'll talk about, or I can do the hypothetical, present the hypothetical if that's the desire of the commission.
I thought that the nominal gift was 25. This is the first time I hear 75.
We're going to get to the changes in just a second.
Yeah. So I can either do a hypothetical on the particular.
Don't bother with a hypothetical.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the proposed changes. So the first change is that even though a gift may be an exception, an employee or official would be prohibited from accepting the gifts under certain circumstances. If it impairs impartiality, independent judgment, because of the situation that is presented, or if the gift is of significant value, which on its face would present a problem. So even though it's on the exception list, personal relationship, what have you, it would still be prohibited. We're also proposing to lower the nominal value from $75 to $20. Again, it's in red, mirroring the state. I would point out that the counties also have a $20 nominal value. And one other item, I want all of them, but honoraria, we're saying now could be provided to an employer or official for a published article, as well as for speaking. And so that is something that would be allowed under the proposed change. A significant revision is that we want to acknowledge that employees can receive gifts inadvertently that are unsolicited, and that happens. If that happens, we want to have options for what the employee or official can do. One is to return the gift to the donor if it's prohibited, or reimburse the donor at market value. Another option is to transfer the gift to a nonprofit if it's something that would make sense or to do that. And then also if the gift is perishable, like a fruit basket or something, and that has happened, I understand, it could be shared with the office or it could be destroyed.
Questions?
Any questions?
Commissioner Pettaween, are you all right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Dorner.
Yeah, just on, can you go back to that slide? On D2, the honoraria for writing a published article, would it also include something like if somebody were to get an award for, like, I'm just going to say best planner or something in a particular topical issue, or best like park lead on a particular topic, that's not an article itself, but it's a recognition from like a professional standard that carries like a gift of $1,000 or something from like another like outside donor. Would we allow that under these as one of the exceptions?
I can address that, or you want to address it, Tracy?
The $1,000 would certainly be way over the limit on that. But with regard to awards for speaking or some sort of professional endeavor, then they could certainly accept an award if it is otherwise insignificant. So $1,000 is way over the $20, so that would not be permitted. But what you'll see, simply because, these are the provisions that we are asking the commission to adopt, but there will be various facts and circumstances that will come up that we cannot possibly anticipate and, of course, place in the document. So one of the last things that Mr. Dokes will touch on will be the creation of an ethics officer to whom individuals with various questions, such as yours, can go to have these matters resolved in a way that is in conformance with both the policy and the law. Does that
Okay,
answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. But I mean, I've come across this a number of times in professional organizations with my own staff and consulting with ethics officers on it. One of the things that we would do in this sort of a situation is that if it's a one-time lifetime sort of event or an honorary one that's not given out very often, we would allow potentially the dollar amount up until a certain amount to be accepted for a gift like that. Or another option would be that they could decline the monetary contribution or the monetary award with it, but still accept the professional sort of distinction. And I think there should be something like this should be worked into the exceptions, or at least worked into the guidance that the ethics officer would be considering, because this is not going to be an uncommon occurrence necessarily if we're attracting really top staff into our planning and parks departments.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that's why we have that's why the ethics officer is going to be important for us, because we just cannot foresee all circumstances.
And this is Michael Beckham.
What would we do for like an award like that? So if somebody were given like an award, could they just decline the monetary amount?
We just don't. I mean, it's hypothetical, right? So if that happened, then we would have to consider it at that time with the ethics officer.
Okay. I mean, I don't think it's going to be super hypothetical coming down the road. I could be wrong, but this is something that I've encountered a number of times with my own staff. So I'm hoping that we'll have this kind of a problem with our staff.
Right. It would be a good problem to have. I agree with you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may add, what you have before you on the screen, this deals with staff and the commissioners accepting gifts from restricted parties. So if it is just purely something that is acknowledging an employee's professional acumen, and it's done by someone who is not conducting business or otherwise considered a restricted party, the mere acceptance of that kind of gift would not be an issue. But again, it's all facts and circumstance specific.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. Other questions? Okay, let's move along.
So, topic 4 is gifts between employees. Under current policy, employees may not solicit or accept a gift from another employee of more than nominal value. They are allowed, however, to make voluntary contributions for special occasions, as you see on the screen, marriage, retirement, etc. The proposed change is to take off the table addressing gifts, voluntary gifts between employees. It's not addressed by the state or the counties. We would retain, however, the solicitation aspect where that would be controlled only for voluntary contributions of a reasonable amount instead of nominal amount for special occasions. And the emphasis on reasonable recognizes that different occasions may call for different types and values of gifts. So, for example, a retiree who has been with the commission for many years may get a different type of gift than a new employee because of a birth of a child or something of that nature. We also have included permitting an employee to solicit other employees for charitable drives that are approved by the department head or executive director. Any questions on that topic? If not, we'll move on to topic 5, which is non-commissioned business. On the current policy, which is being retained, employees are not to engage in non-commissioned business activities while on duty. And that includes all of the items listed on the screen, whether it's personal or working for another entity. The proposed change here is that, and it was based on comments received, is that employees who are carrying out activities when they're off duty and they represent themselves as an employee of the commission, that they're not to hold themselves out as representing the commission. And I skipped through the proposed change because that's the most significant change that we've made to this area. Without permission. There is a hypothetical on this as well. Are there any questions on non-commissioned business? No questions. We can.
No, you can keep going.
Okay, we can move past the hypothetical and discuss non-commissioned employment. Non-commissioned employment is an employee working off premises while off duty. It's permitted as long as it's approved by the department head and it does not create a conflict with their job. It doesn't interfere with their duties at the commission or increase health and safety risks at the commission or to the commission. There are 11, I believe 12 different conditions in all. There are 3 listed here for brevity. The department head has 7 calendar days to approve a request on the current policy. If not, it's approved by default. Employees also have the right to appeal a denial by department heads to the executive director on the current policy. And finally, attorneys are prohibited from providing any legal services outside of the commission unless it's de minimis or pro bono. And even then, the general counsel approval is required. So we've made some substantive changes here. Again, if there are any questions on that before I go to the proposed changes, if not, I will skip the hypothetical. So under the proposed changes, we will remove this default approval. The department head has to sign off before any request for non-commissioned employment is approved. And so this 7-day default that I just talked about would go away. Secondly, there would be no more appeal to the executive director. The department head's decision would be final on this matter. I would point out there are certain activities, military service and union activities that are even on the current policy, their permission isn't required. It's not considered non-commissioned employment. We're adding to that list based on comments serving on the board of the credit union as well as the employment retirement system. The largest, I guess the most significant change is that attorneys now would be treated like any other employee. There would be no more restrictions on them in addition as it is now, but at the same time the general counsel would need to approve. We're going to retain that requirement as it is for other employees when the director has to approve it or the department head has to approve. If there are any questions on non-commissioned employment, on the proposed changes, be happy to take those. If not.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I had to leave at 12 o'clock because the meeting is, suppose it's going over. Because I have to go pick up someone. May I know that, do you need me to stay or can I leave? Because I know that we don't have the other commissioners here.
Mr. Adams, can we take action on this item if Commissioner Pedwin leaves?
That would not have quorum for Montgomery County. However, since the meeting is started, I'd like to forward that question to the General Counsel.
But let me ask you this, how much longer it is? I can stay for another 5 or 10 minutes, but more than that, I have to leave.
What I would suggest.
Let me do this before we. Go ahead.
What I would suggest is poll your members and see if you can take a vote on approving the Code of Ethics, as long as any additional comments from the commissioners are, responded to or incorporated by staff. So you can go ahead and take your vote now, continue to go through the document, and any other comments, staff would certainly, promise to deal with or get back to you or incorporate into the document.
Yes, also, Ms. Pettigrew, I've also seen this before and gone over it and provided any comments, and they've been incorporated. So I just want to let you know that before we take this vote, okay?
Okay,
Chair,
that
I'll
works
move
for me.
approval.
Commissioners, any objection to the recommendation from the General Counsel?
I'll move approval.
I second.
We've got a motion and a second, but I just want to be clear. The motion and the second is to approve the amendments to the practice, but knowing that as we continue the presentation, if there are any issues or concerns, we will incorporate them into the practice. And if anything, I mean, to be blunt, if there's anything that feels beyond the pale, then we'll just revisit it.
Agree.
Because there's nothing stopping us from revisiting this.
Agree.
Okay. All right. So with that, any discussion on the motion?
So I'll
Mr. Adams,
just
can you call
mention
the roll,
for,
please? One
since we're
second.
going
Yeah.
to vote on this, I do have comments on the post-employment conditions. Just getting it closer to actual code, Maryland code, than it is at the moment. So I just want that to be known that way, because I will absolutely make comments on this in a couple minutes, and it's not going to be the same as what it is right now if I was to vote in support of it. It's not going to be major, but like I think we need to be closer to the actual state code.
So that I hear you, and that'll fit into we'll make the changes. If there's concerns that we broadly have, we may need to revisit this because it's again, this is not something that we can only take up once every few years. We can take it up every week if we want to. Not that I would suggest that, but okay. All right. Motion second. Any further discussion? Mr. Adams, can you call the roll, please?
Chair Shapiro.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Harris is temporarily absent. Commissioner Bartley.
Aye.
Commissioner Pettigrew.
Aye.
Deborah, if we don't have Vice Chair Harris, we don't have a quorum, and so the action is not adequate.
He will be returning shortly.
Oh, okay. Mr. Dokes, you want to keep going?
Sure. Yes, I can do that. So I think we were about to review topic 7, use commission resources.
And hold on one sec. Commissioner Pettigrew, you jump off when you have to jump off.
Okay, I really appreciate. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Okay.
You as
Thank
well.
you. You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Vice Chair Harris is returning.
There's a motion and a second. We're in the roll call we're in the vote. So the vote is to you, Mr. Harris.
Aye.
All right.
Vote is 7-0.
Mr. Adams?
Motion passes pending any changes, incorporations.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Dokes, back to you. We're on topic 7.
Okay. So topic 7, use of commission resources. We're into the area now where there are very minor changes going forward. Current policy it says that except for the minimum use, commissioned property or resources cannot be used for other than commissioned business. There are some de minimis exceptions when it can be used for non-commissioned employment or business for personal gain. The change is to take the non-commissioned employment de minimis use out of the policy. We can't think of a reason why anyone would need to use commissioned property or resources to work for another entity, and so that's the only minor change here.
Okay. Questions, commissioners? You can keep going.
Okay. So next topic is use of prestige of office. Again, minor change on the current policy, which will be retained. Employees and officials may not use the prestige of office or title for personal gain or gain of someone else. There are just a couple of clarifications with regards to awarding a contract or using the not recommending a particular lobbyist for compensation. Again, it's in red, brought over from the state code. There are
Thank you.
no changes there, no questions there. I'll move on. Topic 9, disclosure of confidential information. Current rule being retained, employees, officials prohibited from disclosing confidential information gained by virtue of their employment with the commission. The only change here is that it would apply to former employees as well as existing employees. No questions on that one. On to topic 10, post-employment restrictions. In current policy, the one place this is covered is in the purchasing manual that prohibits employees from participating directly or indirectly in a commission purchasing action for a period of 18 months after the employment has ended, unless the executive director waives it. The proposed change is to mirror the state by saying this would apply to everybody. First of all, any employee for an indefinite period of time that would be prohibited from assisting another party on a specific matter or contract when that employee participated in a significant way in that same matter or contract while they were employed with the commission. So that is a fix that we're making to mirror the state. If there are any questions on that.
Hold on a sec there. Yeah, Commissioner
Okay.
Dorner, I think, had questions about this.
Sure.
Yeah. So I have two kind of areas of where I sort of diverge on this. One is that I don't think we should have only a lifetime ban, even though the state has only the lifetime ban in what is it, like the state code that's cited in there, like 202, 40 or D4 or whatever it is. I think we should probably have something that's more reflective of federal code, where we have a lifetime restriction on things that you have substantial interest, or whatever the keyword is that they're using in the state code. And then I think we should have a limited, maybe like the 18-month or 2-year kind of ban on topics that are not quite as substantial, that you could still work on those later on. Because otherwise we're locking people permanently out of certain kinds of post-employment opportunities. And there might be things that, like, how do we determine whether or not they've had like this substantial involvement or not? Like if it's a minor involvement, as written right now, I know we have that significant participation, but just being part of like providing advice, I don't think that's necessarily a significant participation. Like we could have planners that can no longer work on certain topics when they go to other jurisdictions, if they have some sort of an overlap. And I think that would be doing a disservice to some of our employees. So we should probably consider to have some sort of not just a lifetime ban, but then maybe a 1 or 2 year kind of period of kind of a cool down for that. The other aspect that I think we need to work on a little bit on this is that it's not, even though I'm saying we shouldn't follow the state code, even what we have doesn't follow the state code. So if you read the state code very specifically, there are exceptions for if you work in other like government, state government, city municipal services or county services. We don't have that in this right now. And that I would not vote in favor of this as is for this particular clause. Because the way that it's written in the packet right now in G1, it just basically says that like if you work on a commission matter, you can no longer work on it thereafter. But if we go over to DPI in our county, if we were to have somebody who's working and goes over to DPI and they're working on a similar matter, they wouldn't be able to do it. In typical kind of practice at the federal level, if you change and you go to another federal agency, you're not prohibited from working on that. I understand the idea of going over to a private entity and then working as like an expert witness on something on the same topic, but we shouldn't be prohibiting it if they're going to another state agency or local or county kind of agency as well. So we need to get a little bit closer to the state code with allowing the representation as long as it's a municipal corporation, county, or state government agency. We also need to be very specific that the wording is really tight in what we have right now, and it doesn't match or mirror the state one. When we say represent or assist another party, that's different than the state legislation, which is talking about in a case or a contract. there are going to be specific examples that we spell out in our policy that talks about the significant participation or the kinds of things that would qualify for that. But I think we need to be very careful that from an ethical standpoint, the concern is that I leave the commission, I'm working as a commission employee, I leave, I come back and I'm working in my next job on some sort of a matter. If I'm just working on that matter, but I'm not actually party to it, and I'm not actually going into like meetings and representing that new entity before the commission, there shouldn't be any prohibition on that necessarily. The prohibition kicks up when I get on a phone call or I go into a meeting with a commission employee, and there's this sort of like this relationship, and that's where the ethical conflict comes in play. It's not necessarily if I'm at this other entity and I see nobody from the commission while I'm working on it. I don't think we should necessarily have that kind of a blanket approval. Maybe for people who have extremely significant participation, fine. But this would go all the way down to any kind of a planner that provides any sort of a memo, even on a development case within here, because they're providing advice potentially on that kind of a matter. And I think that's just way too restrictive. So I would not be in favor of how we've gotten it written right now, because we're getting rid of one of the clauses that's the temporary ban, and then we're also not even keeping particularly close to the state code. And I think there's certain kind of like things that we need to be careful about, that we don't want to lock out people's ability to pursue other post-employment opportunities. So I don't know if we table like this section or if we take it up today.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to what Mr. Dorner has stated. Mr. Dorner is a licensed practicing attorney. I'm a licensed practicing attorney, and we can't even do that with other attorneys that worked in our firms. And so forever precluding any licensed professional from consulting or working on businesses or issues that have an issue that the Parks and Planning Commission would deal with is difficult to comprehend, and it acts as a servitude or an indentured type of contract or rule. And what's really curious is that Governor Martin O'Malley is advising the planning board of Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning, and he was a former governor of the state of Maryland, but he is astute in the process of high-performing government organizations. And rules such as this, if it was applied to the governor's office, would preclude Governor Martin O'Malley from using his talent, skills, knowledge, and abilities to help us. And so this is a very problematic provision, especially when considering appointments to a board are not lifetime, and there's a natural attrition from the board, and forever precluding anyone who worked on the board from ever doing anything regarding Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning is an overreach. And so, again, if we just look at, having the most honorable Governor Martin O'Malley consult with the firm and work with us, and him being the highest executive of the state of Maryland and all the related counties, it just seems preposterous. Thanks.
Yeah, so let's hear from staff on this, and maybe even from our counsel on this, because my experience of this is that your all's interpretation of this, I mean, I want to be blunt, but your interpretation of this is beyond how I've experienced this interpreted in the past. That I don't think it precludes any work related to anything the commission has done. But Ms. Borden, you have thoughts, reactions to this,
Yes.
and other staff members? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I think I can allay your fears and also offer a suggestion. So, the way that this is written, it's really designed to prevent the changing of teams in the middle of a project. Okay, I'm working on a master plan. I'm the project manager of that master plan. I decide to leave the commission. I go to work for a private urban planning firm, and I go to work for them and I start working on that master plan. That is the kind of thing that this is designed to say you can't do that, because as a member of the commission's team on that master plan, you were privy to all kinds of information, public and private, public and proprietary information, because, sometimes businesses, commercial entities share information with us that's sometimes private information. And so you would be taking all of that information to a private entity, a commercial entity, and then using that, basically giving that other entity an unfair advantage. That is what this is designed to eliminate. Now, the indefinite part is because when you think about it, that changing of teams and sort of taking the information that you gathered when you were on our team to another team, as long as that is the same project, it's always going to be a problem, even though that project might take 3 years or 4 years to finish. And so it's the fact of you were privy to information that you might not have been privy to if you were in the private sector. You take that information and then you use it for a private party's benefit. That is really the crux of this. It's not a matter of you were a planner, you worked on plans, and therefore you can never work on plans again. That is absolutely not what this says. And that is not how it would be interpreted. However, we have heard you. We think that, or you think that this is prone or going to be prone to overreach. And so I think that there is there are some things that we can do to tighten up this language and to make it closer to what the state has and to introduce some exceptions. And so I would say that we should absolutely take another look at this and incorporate some of the comments that we've heard so that we can get it closer to something that you are comfortable with. But I do think that the crux of the idea of taking information from one team to the other and sort of switching teams, that is the issue. And that is the thing that, it doesn't really have a time limit on it, because it's an issue of, utilizing things that you learned in the public sector and then going to the private sector and using that special information, not your general, I'm a great planner information, that special information that you got because you worked for us. And so, I think that has value, and I think we need to preserve that issue, that prohibition, but we maybe need to tailor it back so that it really does, get to what's intended, which is, and it's not intended to cause indentured servitude where you can never work again, ever, just because you don't work for the commission. That is absolutely not what this is intended to do, and it wouldn't be interpreted as such.
So let's take your advice. We hear Commissioner Dorner, Commissioner Bartley's concerns, and you said that we can revisit this. We can figure out how to tighten up the language. So take time, maybe get a little feedback from them, come up with a new proposal on this with some amended language, and then we can take this up next month. If it's more than just technical, if it's significant enough where we need to consider voting again, then we can take that up next month.
Absolutely.
Is that okay, Commissioner Dorner, Commissioner Bartley?
Yeah, so I'm not I'm not saying something differently than what Deborah was just expressing. I definitely agree that you shouldn't be switching teams halfway through the proceedings. But right now, even the description of switching teams is not clear. We should explicitly have in there that it doesn't apply to representation or joining employment at any other municipal government, county or state or federal entity, because that's not explicit in there. And that shouldn't be prohibited if they're going to another public entity. And that's
clear that that's the language. So make sure that your language will, that they're going to come up with a proposal and make sure it passes muster for you.
Yeah, and that's what I want to see in there, that there's no prohibition of public to public kind of engagements. And then the other thing that I'll be looking for is I think that there is a distinction between the lifetime and the temporary ban. I know that in the Maryland State Code that's not distinguished in that sense, but the way that we have defined in our own, going beyond the state code, in our own way in the significant participation, my just plain reading of it is that it would actually cover planners working on very minor things, writing memos and stuff like that. So I think we need to be careful about having that explicit language in there where we're defining significant participation, because that's not as clearly done in the state code. And I like the federal code a little bit better because it allows for, it has a lifetime prohibition if you have that significant participation, but if you have a minor participation, it's just a temporary ban of like 1 to 2 years, depending on what you're doing. And I think if we could come somewhere in between there, I would feel a bit more comfortable with this kind of language. I absolutely agree we should have post-employment restrictions of some type. I think we're just going to the opposite extreme right now.
Understood.
Asantha's her hand up.
Yes, I was going to say, Commissioner Dorner, Commissioner Bartley, if you have specific language that you are like, could you please send it to me? I will make sure our team receives it, and we will take that into consideration as we do the update and edits.
Great.
And I should also mention I'm not a licensed attorney, even though Commissioner Bartley was promoting me. I'm not. So I'm a lowly economist that doesn't have any license.
Right.
We've
Okay.
adopted you anyway.
Exactly. All right. Other questions on this item? And we have a process in place.
I thought you were an attorney. Where did I read that?
He just feels like one sometimes.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of legal shows on TV. I did mock trial in college and in high school, but I never actually sat for the bar. So
That was close. All right, commissioners, let's move on to topic 11. Mr. Dokes, we will ask you to move with alacrity.
Yes, indeed. So topic 11 is political activities. Again, we're in the area of very minor revisions. Essentially, the proposed policy would be the same as existing. Notice 2207 is political activities, and also Chapter 1800. The merit rules are pretty much brought intact. The only significant change is there's a section in the Commission's code that says that if an employee who is required to follow, that employees are prohibited from the overthrow of the government by unconstitutional violent means. And so that is a provision brought over from the local government article of the state of Maryland. And so we're adding that.
Okay.
Any questions? Right.
All right.
So moving on, if there are no questions on political activities, nepotism, again, retaining the existing rule, which says that employees, including department heads, may not participate in personnel actions that involve family members. Department heads have to make sure that family members do not supervise each other. And a very minor change, it's more as a proactive requirement that department heads recuse themselves from any employment action involving their own family members and delegate that authority to a deputy. If there are no questions on that, I can proceed to topic 13. Financial disclosure is essentially the existing practice 561 brought over in its entirety. The only significant change is that there is a requirement currently that says that an employee who is involved in a conflict of interest matter during the course of the year would have to report it. Even if that employee has an inquiry about a matter and communicates that matter to the department head, it becomes part of the financial disclosure statement, which, as you know, financial disclosure statements are subject to public disclosure, public scrutiny. We note that in our research that neither the state nor the counties have such a provision, and so we're proposing to remove that item, that provision from the Commission's financial disclosure requirements. Any questions
Sounds
about financial disclosures? The last topic is ethics officer. Under current rules, the executive director has the responsibility to interpret the ethics code or ethics policies, if you will, and with advice from the department heads and the Office of General Counsel. And then also the executive director seeks any questions or interpretations or clarification from the commission for resolution of those matters. The proposal is to have the responsibility rest with an ethics officer or officers, if you will, who are appointed by the general counsel. That position would also be the serve as a point of contact for employees on ethics, would handle issues and refer matters for appropriate internal and external investigation to appropriate authorities with consultation of general counsel, and would also prepare the annual ethics report. Any questions about
And just for
Yes.
Sorry, just for clarification, the ethics officer will be an attorney within the Office of General Counsel. It'll be the compliance counsel that we added to our budget last year, and that person reports directly to the general counsel.
Smart.
So if there are further questions or comments, we can, I'll turn it back to Mike Beckham for next steps.
Yeah, and I want to thank the commissioners for their vote of approval. We will work with the legal department on changes, any additional changes to the post-employment restrictions provisions, and we thank you for your time.
Great.
Thank you.
So we've already taken action on this. Commissioners, any final thoughts, reactions to this? Let me just say thank you for all the hard work on this. This was not just a technical exercise. I know there was a whole lot of work that went into it. So thanks to all the team members who were part of this. And commissioners, thank you for your questions and comments and your flexibility around our quorum. And again, we've already taken action, so let's move on. The hour is late. The only thing left on our agenda is the officers' reports. These are all for information only. I'll check in with each of you real quickly just to see if there's anything you need to bring to us. Madam Executive Director, anything you want to bring to the commissioners?
No, just it's for information only. Just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, anything you have for us?
No, nothing to add.
Okay. And our General Counsel, Ms. Borden, anything else you want to bring to us?
No, thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, and definitely have a wonderful, wonderful holiday, everyone.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Commissioners, any new business that anyone has before us? Seeing none, then without objection, we are adjourned. Same for me. Happy holidays, everybody. Enjoy the Thanksgiving, and we will convene again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. Bye now.